Before we start, I should say this, and I think most of you who have followed me for any length of time know I'm not violent. Self-defense, yes, not violent. I don't believe in socialism because it results in millions of body bags. But there's something that has to be done, and I'm going to dovetail this segment. It's just a continuation of what we did in the last one. But I'm going to give you more to think about because this problem is multi-layered. And this is intentional. I've spent the last few days intermittently talking about the housing crisis, correct? Both in mortgage rates and in rent. And I was prepping for this because we're bringing this to an apex. And we need to collectively, as Americans, begin to come together with common strategies. And we're basically going to rise up and say, we're not going to take this anymore. Now, right now, as a matter of disclaimer, I can pay my bills. I'm fine. But we've also been disciplined with our debt. But our discipline came before the crisis, which is basically post-COVID. Oh, we were headed for trouble before that. But COVID was the dropping off the cliff part where American families fell apart economically. And we had taken care of our business prior to that time. Doesn't make us any better. It makes us older. So we had the opportunity to do it. If we were in our 30s at that time, we probably wouldn't be sitting here saying, thank goodness for us. But I want to make sure you hear me say this. You're thinking, well, you're giving advice to a problem that doesn't affect you. Not in the immediate, but it affects people around me. It affects family members that I have to help. It affects me down the road because eventually, if you're not in that 1%, you're all going to be debt slaves. There's no one that escapes this. Yes, our house is paid off. No, we have no car payment. Yes, we have some money. Yes, we have some gold. Yes, to a lot of those things. But that doesn't make us immune. I come from a family line on my mom's side that were Henry Ford's cousins, and they were quite well to do. Now, Henry forgot to tell them, I know the stock market's going to crash. I know land values are going to crash. And that's where these people had their money. Oh, and the money they made was in banks that were going to fail. So I have a cautionary nature. And I know that if you're not in that upper 1% that controls over 50% of the wealth in this country, you are all at risk. So don't get this false sense of security. I don't have it. People say, well, Dave, I see you're back selling storable food. Yeah, yeah. And guess what? We have it because I know the dark days are coming. The fall of this country can't be described in any other terms than it's deliberate. You think this is all coincidental that at one time the greatest economic nation in the history of the planet is now in the state right now? Where are we ranked at now in freedom? 32, 33. Oh, thank God for our freedoms. Yeah, thank God for what they were, not what they are. And our economic plight is more than double worse than that on a global scale. I'd much rather be living in Sweden or Finland or Norway's economy, wouldn't you? Much rather. Singapore, same thing. Taiwan, well, except for the threat of invasion every day from China, same thing. You are living, well, Donald Trump, and excuse my French, but I'm going to quote him. He comes down the escalator to announce he's running for president. I thought that was a joke, to be honest with you. And he said, America's become a shithole. Well, put an exponent on that. A shithole to the what power? Excuse my French, but I'm using the language of the president to make a point. If you have over 50% of the country that have no hope of recovering from the debt that they're in, no hope, there's nothing they can look at that next year will be better than this year. It's a problem. It's a real problem. Well, let's talk about something that if you have money set aside, Your savings account down and down and down. You're being paid. What JP Morgan's paying what 1.01% interest on savings accounts, and they loan out at 7 to 20%. They can take your money under Dodd-Frank whenever they want. This is why if you have discretionary money, it doesn't have to be much. I'm talking you have $500. You can buy some gold. If you have 5,000, you can buy a little more. What does gold do? It preserves your wealth. But I'll tell you the one thing you better do right now, pensions are being used as investments for the rich corporations and the banks. Knock, knock. Are you hearing me? The very group that has put you in unrecoverable debt is now controlling your pensions. What could go wrong? See, it's interesting that when the story is part of what our sponsor is. Now, what Noble Gold can do for you is get your retirement away from these people, at least when you're in the IRA and 401k mode, and put it under your control where they can't touch it and back it with a precious metal that'll appreciate as opposed to a dollar that's collapsing under the $39 trillion of debt, in which we're spending $900 million a day on this war. It was almost $1 billion a day on this war, fought for a foreign country's benefit. And then the noble organization TPUSA that stood up for America, stood up for the youth and their future, they've been hijacked. And it's just representative of what we're going through. So what's the answer here? Well, first of all, I'd call Noble Gold. 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347. Or if you forget the number, go to davehodgesgold.com to start the process. Let's review a couple of things and then get down to some real serious stuff that hopefully will motivate you to collect food. If you've got any discretionary money, get gold, get your retirement out, and you go, Dave, that could cost some money, and I'm in debt. Yeah, how much you going to have left when the banks take your money? Because that day's coming. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, let me quote the soon-to-be Federal Reserve chief, the new guy taking over on the 15th of this month. You know what he said? Yes, we're worried about the security of savings. In other words, Dodd-Frank 2010, here it comes. There it goes. Retirement in the bank gone. Your cash gone. That's what he's saying to Congress. And he's also said that we have to inflate the debt away. He didn't say it quite that bluntly, but that's what it is. So while you're earning 0.01% and they let inflation go from the 2.7% they say it's at, it's not ever what it is because they don't count the price of gas or food. Do you think that's a factor today? The real inflation rate's probably closer to 10% when you factor in those modalities month to month now since the war started. So you're getting 0.01% and your money is losing value at 10%. Can you pass the sixth grade math question? How long will it be until you are broke? How long? Yeah. And then you add to the debt, right? You know, you go to the increasingly crappy job that has not had a raise in how long, not keeping up with inflation. You're in danger of being laid off every single day because of AI. And now you can't even afford to drive to work because this president has become the vice president to Benjamin Netanyahu. That's a fact, Jack. And here's something else to consider. The oil companies are making money hand over fist on this crisis. They have no motivation for it to end. If they did, they'd be putting pressure on Congress and Trump to end the war. They never would have let the war started. But they know this. If gas should double, well, we'll just kick in a little extra and we'll make it triple or quadruple. Where gas was $2 a gallon, it's now over $4 a gallon. And guess what they do then? Now they add their part over the top. It's not a cost averaging. It's not that, okay, well, gee, we're sorry, America, but oil it's double. We got to charge you double. No, we're not going to sit here and make money on the stagnant. You're going to share the cost and the revenue we're losing. You're going to make that up and then some because we're going to tack on extra money. Profiteering on a crisis. Now, it used to be when you're at war, right? And you have needed resources. I mean, this is something that Lincoln had to do in the Civil War. And your area is in danger of being invaded, like Washington, D.C. was after the first and second battles of Bull Run. And sugar was going for $20 a sack, which today that would be like about $10,000. And Lincoln had to step in and says, we're stopping this right now. Well, we're in a similar crisis, America, because this is an oil-based economy. Everything is shipped. And is this president doing anything to cause you to have relief? No, he's just turning the cheek to the other side. Says oil companies just continue to slap America in the face. They'll just turn the other cheek and they'll let you do it again. And then when you're done with that cheek, turn the cheek back again and they'll do it again. And we're just fine with that because you're the oil companies and you give us nice donations. And we're all rich in Congress because of people like you. Isn't that pretty much how the game's played? Now, there's a flip side to this coin. Is if it wasn't profiteering illegitimately in what used to be illegal to profiteer on a crisis, now we turn the coin over to the other side. And now that increasingly crappy job that you have that doesn't keep up with inflation, having more demands put on you, America's going to salaried positions so they can work you 60 hours a week rather than pay you time and a half after 40. And they're making you work yourself to the bone. But then you wake up at 5 a.m. to an email that came to your box and it says, you are laid off. AI. Shouldn't we be stopping the intrusion of AI into business now since America's suffering? Shouldn't the government start pulling back some funding? And they're funding a lot of the data centers in various ways. But shouldn't they be doing that right now to give Americans relief? You know, you may be having a declining standard of living, but you're not going to have the bottom fall out because we're not going to let AI take your jobs. Would you expect a representative government that's there to represent you to do that? But they're not doing that. They're funding your demise. Your government has become your enemy financially. They are in partnership with people that sell your debt, profiteer off it, get you in more debt, trick you into not reading the fine print in the student loans. And then we have how many millions of people trapped in that student loan hell? And now there's even cottage industries springing up. We'll help you with your student debt. And what ends up happening, it adds to the amount that you're actually paying. Oh, we'll get you a little reduction, but our fees and then the interest on the fees that you can't afford to pay up front continue to accumulate. And now you're really in trouble. I told you this was a part two stemming from part one, and I could do 100 parts on this because anything that can be wrong with an economy is wrong with this one. We don't have a merit-based open market except for the 1%. Except for the 1%. You know, here's what's funny. People want wage and price controls. We're hearing that now from the socialists. Well, we don't need to have wage and price controls. Although the 1% don't have them, you do. Oh, excuse me, Mr. and Mrs. America, as you enter into the Social Security phase of your life, oh, if you make over a pittance, make over like $36,000, all that Social Security you paid in over the years, they begin to systematically reduce it based on the money that you earn. That's a wage and price control imposed on the people that can least afford it in fixed income situations living in a crappy environment where housing market's going out of control and you're paying much higher property taxes on fixed income and you're under wage and price controls if you go out and get a job and try to pay it off, which you can't. You are trapped into losing your home for a lot of you. Are you beginning to open your eyes and see this? Because I don't think many people see it until they hear it from someone like me and you go, ah, think about that. You're right. Now, if you're 55 and you don't know the rules of Medicare, you might want to look at the rules of Medicare because that day is coming and you're still paying your 7+% of every check that you get, but the costs are going to be so high, Social Security will not keep up. When you get a second job to pay it off, well, then you're going to lose Social Security. You're in debt hell for the rest of your life, and the corporations love it. BlackRock and the private equity firms, Vanguard, State Street, they make all kinds of money when your house has to go on the market to pay it off because now they get to sell what was a mortgage for their investors, the banks, right? They get to sell that off for a much higher profit. Oh, and if you're able to hang on to your house, okay, because you have planned and you got a pretty good nest egg, now they're going after that because they're going to soon be taxing the equity on your house and it's retroactive. How do I know? Because that's what's coming in California. And it's appearing all across in various states, and AOC and Bernie Sanders are embracing this for a federal action, which is coming. Do you understand what I'm telling you here? Now, we can sit back and passively say the government's too big. We can't do anything about it. We got M16s, they got F-16s. Okay, all right. I don't want to hear that rhetoric about violence and standing up and how futile it is. That's not what I'm talking about doing. You can bring a system to its knees without having done anything illegal. But most people, when they hear the solutions, oh, I could never do that. I have to stay in the system. And it's the very system that's destroying them. By the way, let me go back to the home equity again. If you haven't heard me talk about that, I'll just give you one example. So maybe the alarm bells will go off and it'll motivate you to future action. If you bought a house for, let's say, $200,000 30 years ago, decent house. That's a good house, way above the average. Okay. And today it's worth $800,000. Well, right now, the number that's being thrown around, and this is what Janet Yellen was talking about when she was Secretary of Treasury under Biden, we want to tax that 200,000 to 800,000, that $600,000. We want to do it retroactively, and we want to tax you to 43% rate. Let's go around numbers. Let's just say 40%. 40% of 600,000 is how much? Do you have that much money sitting in your account that you can cover that? And then when your house inflates the next year by 7 to 10%, are you going to come up with that too? Uh, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Enough is enough, America. I'm Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show.